I've run into one case in the last 15 years where we had air contamination problem. Most of the time it's groundwater contamination or surface water contamination where the water runs off and into your lakes, rivers, and streams. And I've had a couple of cases to where the contractor did power washing at a fixed site for a long period of time. In both cases, it turned out to be truck washing. When the property was sold, you come in and do a test, environmental test on the property, and it turned hazardous, and then it turned into a big cleanup site at that time. So, but most of the cases, your enforcement action is going to be around surface water contamination. But most people, when they think of off-property discharge, they're only thinking about surface water. They're not thinking about groundwater contamination, air contamination, or soil contamination. Discharge to storm drain should be free of visible foam and oil sheen. Discharge to surface water must be treated for solids removal. This can be accomplished by filtration or by directing the wash water to a settling basin like a tank or a low spot where the water flow stops. Discharging the storm drain should be filtered with an oil absorbent boom or an oil water separator. BMP for storm drain discharge. Cold water only, no chemicals, no visible foam, pre-clean oil and grease spots, no oil sheen, remediate through an oil absorbent boom, no debris, DERBIS, filter through a 40 mesh screen or 200 micron bag filter. And some jurisdictions are allowing the use of hot water. Enforcement. Tickets are written to everybody involved, to the power wash company, to the operators, to the managers, and to the customer's company. And we had one case in California where they hit the school board and teachers and everything else. Another problem with enforcement is yo-yo. Basically, it has to do with people coming in and out of the enforcement cycle. And enforcement will get real heavy, and then a guy will get promoted or go to another city. The next person comes in, he's not interested in it. There's no enforcement action, and the customers, the contract cleaners, will end up going back to unregulated power washing to save money. So you get this yo-yo going. Man, I keep hitting that thing. You get the yo-yo effect, keep going up and down. Trivia. Most citations are written within a 20-mile radius of a university setting. 95% of everything I've been teaching has been learned from environmental regulators. Wastewater capture. Most communities will accept 85 to 95% of wastewater being captured. They'll allow some leakage under portable dams and drain covers, some overspray, and some drag off. This is just some more technology that we looked at where they're picking up the water. I want to get into the regs because we're running short on time. Okay, we're going to talk about Fort Worth and Houston. There was a public comment period for the city of Fort Worth back in 95, and basically they were going to shut down the industry. I got with the city of Fort Worth and asked them if I would sponsor a mobile power washing environmental protection and compliance seminar with extend the public comment period. After about 3 days, they come back and said yes, they would. We ended up with 100 contract cleaners and 40 federal, state, and EPA environmental regulators showed up. The EPA said they wouldn't come because it was sponsored by a private company, but in the end, everybody come because it was significant and it was a topic that needed to be addressed. And that resulted in the Fort Worth Ordinance. When that meeting was over, it was so violent that finally the city of Fort Worth said they'd throw out their ordinance and start over, which they did. Highlights. This is one of the things I wanted to cover. This is what you're here for. A discharge or a flow of cold water used in cosmetic cleaning that is not contaminated with any soap or detergent, degreaser, solvents, emulsifiers, detergents, or any other cleaning substance may be discharged to the storm drain as long as the storm drain inlet is screened to catch debris and the discharge passes through an oil absorbent pad or boom. No oil sheen may be present in the discharge after it passes through the pad or boom. Screen the storm drain inlet with a 200 mesh or finer screen to catch the debris. The total volume of wastewater generated by all the cosmetic cleaners operating in Fort Worth on any given day is not likely to exceed 20,000 gallons. This volume is insignificant when compared to the city's total treatment capacity. Now that was a big statement when we made it at the time, but it's proved to be true. The water belongs to the property owner, not the cosmetic cleaner, so the wastewater should be discharged on site if possible. The ideal discharge point would be into a sand or grit trap such as those found in car wash bays. Unfortunately, few sites contain such facilities, so the discharge options revert to sinks, toilets, floor drains, and cleanout stubs, private property. Discharging through a 400 micron filter to remove grit and sludge. It is up to the property owner to decide which conveyance to discharge to and discharge into, as they own the plumbing system located within their property lines. Discharging to manholes are strictly forbidden no matter where they are located. That was another groundbreaking deal, and I see that in a lot of places, every time I read in the regulations where it says they won't allow the contractor to discharge into sinks, toilets, floor drains, and cleanout stubs, I know the detergents and the storm drains are going to go up. Cosmetic cleaners that utilize wastewater recycling fits into processed water category and must test their effluent at least once annually. $50 permit fee for the first rig and $25 for each additional rig. Pre-clean liquid accumulations of oil and grease with oil-absorbent clay or similar materials prior to washing. The oil-soaked clay should be placed in a plastic bag and disposed of into the dumpster. That's been good. That's been well received and no problems. Temperature range is lower than 150 degrees. It's tough for a contractor not to be below 150 degrees. Wide pH range from 5 to 12. And when they get their permit, they have a discharge permit. They put it on the side of their trailer so they can see it. So if a regulator pulls up, he'll know whether they have a permit or not. All offenses are punishable fines up to $2,000 per offense. All water is defined as any water over 110 degrees. Discharges to the storm drain using hot water, cosmetic cleaning without any chemicals are approved, provided that permission is granted by the Department of Environmental Management prior to using the hot water. What did the Fort Worth Ordinance miss? The yo-yo effect. I think the best thing to prevent that is the BASMA pollution prevention voucher. And the other thing that wasn't in the ordinance was 1,000 gallons per acre per month for bioremediation. Those are questions I get asked most often. There's a picture of the BASMA pollution prevention voucher. If you would have those filled out by the cosmetic cleaner and leave one with a customer for 3 years, you wanted to go back and audit what's happening at that location, you'd have that paperwork to look at, and this would prevent this yo-yo effect. So even if you had non-enforcement for a year or two, if you went back in, you'd have those records that you could ask for. Effectiveness of the Fort Worth regulations. Now then, detergents in the storm drain. In the video, I talked about 60 to 14, going down to 4 to 14%, and here we go down. 2007, we're down into 1% category. You might note that there's been no enforcement actions by the city of Fort Worth for the last 24 months. It's all voluntary. So in 2007, we're down into the 1% range in detergents in the storm drain, and now this is a percentage of all storm drains. They got 560 that they look at, and they don't look at all of them. Fort Worth achieved buzz result without any citations or enforcement actions, completely voluntary, and I'm almost completely without any cost.